once again. This is Nuance. Thank you all for joining us. As always, I'm Mike Scala, and we will be speaking about the Fulton County District Attorney and the attempts to disqualify her from that Georgia election interference case in a few. But first, I want to introduce my co-host, Jay Carter, also known as Timid, hip hop artist and the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Doing all right. Um, Recovering from that horrible movie I watched yesterday.
Recovering from a movie. All right.
Yeah, so no, but I'm doing all right. Not bad. I've been really busy this past week, projects that started on with different clients and readings and this type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's
Same
all.
here. I've been busy as well with different projects. As you know, this is the beginning of election season, and
Right.
a great deal of my business focuses on election law, obviously, campaign law, helping these campaigns get off the ground, make the ballot, and so forth, helping with policy and wherever I can be useful. And so this is really my busy time because this is the election stuff that happens on top of all the other stuff that's been going on, right? I've been doing wills recently and civil cases and so forth. So, these next few weeks slash months are my busiest time. And then hopefully things will slow down just a bit so that I can keep my sanity.
Yeah, that's what's up. That's definitely what's up. So, um, this month has flown by like so quickly.
Oh,
It's
year.
really
It feels like it was just New Year's Eve
right.
and we're heading into March. But you know what? I'm not complaining in the sense that I'm happy that spring is almost here because I don't like the winter.
Nah, I don't either. No, I'm good with that. And actually, you know what? It was for 2 days, like over the weekend, it was like 65 for 2 days straight. So it's like crazy. Like we're still in February.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of being in February, I just got back a couple of days ago from Caucus weekend, and we call it Caucus
Yes.
weekend for short, although the legislative body that puts on this event every year has a big name. In fact, you look at the acronym and you're like, how is that an acronym? There's just too many letters. Like, who's going to even remember that? It's not even like a catchy acronym, right? It's just like a bunch of letters. But it's Black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, and Asian Legislative Caucus, I believe.
Okay. Wasn't it originally like Black Caucus weekend or is that separate?
Well, no, people call it Black Caucus weekend, but it is the weekend of this entire legislative group, which it isn't just black legislators, but because it's a
Right.
mouthful. I think that's really what it is. It's a mouthful to say the entire name out. So people call it Black Caucus weekend.
Right, right.
Well, to be fair, you do see mostly black elected officials represented at this event.
Right.
You don't see a ton of Asian groups there, and even the Hispanic population seems to be a little underrepresented. So calling it Black Caucus Weekend, I suppose, is fair, though, to be accurate, right? It does have a larger name, and it really encompasses all elected officials of color in the state of New York, and not just the officials themselves, but the people who work with them, the unions, people who interact with them, people who work in politics, right, and engage with these elected officials.
I wonder if being that it's mostly known as Black Caucus Weekend, if other officials don't go or other supporters don't go, because I think this is primarily a black event.
You know, that could be, although I'll say this, having worked in Albany myself and actually having attended several of the Black Caucus meetings, and see, I'm doing it now, shorthand, Black Caucus, right? But having attended
Right.
meetings, they are very proactive in reaching out to all of the legislators and making sure that they can have a piece of the action, right? So there are different workshops, different events, all different kinds of functions going on throughout the weekend, and they want as many of these elected officials and their teams involved as possible.
Right.
So because of all the planning that goes into it, I don't think that people are or should be feeling shut out of it. But
Right.
it may be a subtle thing, right? There may be some people thinking, yeah, this is Black Caucus, and I don't really belong here. I don't know. I don't think that's the vibe that they try to put out, but I can
Right.
see
Right.
things happening, like you said, just based on the shorthand name, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
So, but I mean, it's good though. I mean, like you said, if everyone's uh, they're trying to do there's workshops and all this for a variety of things. I mean, that's what you want anyway. You want as many different diverse groups involved in the electorate, in the politics, so that they have a voice and a say in what goes on and what governs them. So
Right. And to be fair, also, there aren't a whole lot of Asian elected officials in New York, right? So it's not like you're going to see equally split between the black and the Asian folks. I mean,
right,
this isn't Hawaii, this isn't the West Coast. Obviously
right,
there are a few, but that's not what you see predominantly over here.
right. Yeah. So I mean, you could be seeing 100% of the delegation, the Asian delegation, showing up.
And you just wouldn't notice. Right?
Right, right. So
No, but in all seriousness, it is a good event. I like going every year. And I've talked on here about political conferences, and sometimes in general,
right,
conferences can feel a little repetitive because you do end up running into the same people that you see in the city, right? So you know,
right,
it's almost as funny because you're going to Puerto Rico. I think some people just use that as an excuse to vacation in Puerto Rico because really you're hanging out with the same people that you see in New York, but it's a different setting. So on the one hand, it's kind of like taking a vacation with 500 political friends and acquaintances in Puerto Rico. That's kind of cool, right?
right.
But aside from that, these are the same folks. I had a joke with Andre, my campaign manager, not long ago. He flew to Somos in Puerto Rico a few years ago, and I said, "Well, why are you going out there? What's your business out there?" And he said that he had to meet with another consultant and discuss business. And I'm like, "Oh," but the person he was meeting with is based in New York. So he could have met with them any day of the week in New York City. They're both based in New York City, right? He had to
Really?
fly out to Puerto Rico to meet with them, have a drink and politic. But, that's just kind of what happens.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'm sure people use it as an excuse to get away. Plus,
Yeah. But, and also they're just
the
general
change of
networking
venue. I'm sorry?
and also they're just general networking opportunities. Although
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oftentimes you end up networking with the same people that you already know, so there's that, right? But then it's like you could be hanging in a crowd of friends or people that you're talking to, and then they introduce you to someone else. Oh, this is such and such from this union or from this group. Oh, and you exchange cards, you start talking, and so you do kind of meet people through mutual friends that way.
Right, right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So
So
interesting.
yeah, and I really enjoy Caucus Weekend because it's funny. I was recently watching a documentary that was about Master Ace's album Disposable Arts. Have you seen that documentary?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen the Black Sheep one either.
Mm.
That's yeah.
I would recommend it in part because they show you the studio where the album was recorded, which is actually in Woodhaven, Queens, in my city
Okay.
council district. And it's not there anymore, but it's in the same building where Nearest Tavern is, the oldest bar in the US, right? We celebrate this bar often around here. Well, there used to be a studio.
We had that owner on as a guest.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was a studio in the same building, and a lot of
Right.
classic hip hop, not just hip hop, but other genres as well. Kiss, they said a lot of music was recorded there, including Eminem's verse on Hellbound, which a lot of people will recognize. So this whole Master Ace album was done there, and they show it and they talk about it and go into detail on it, and they go into all the songs. But one of the things that struck me about that documentary was Master Ace was talking about how he had come up to the Juice Crew and he kind of got his props early on in the 80s, and then things kind of got quiet for him. He had some label problems, and there
Right.
were several years there where he wasn't really doing anything, and he felt like his career was over, and there was no point of him even releasing any new music anymore. He wasn't feeling inspired. He said, "No one wants to hear that, this old Master Ace guy. I'm past my prime." That's how he was feeling at the time, until someone actually took him to the UK, and they went to I think to maybe throughout Europe, a couple countries, I forget, but I know they started out in England, and he said he went out there and the love he got was so tangible, so real. People wanted to hear those old songs that he was doing, and they knew him still, and they still were feeling him, and that gave him the fire to go out there and record a new record. He said, "Okay, maybe this is feasible. Maybe I do have something left in me." So
Right.
I was thinking about that when I was at Caucus Weekend because I would run into people, and even people I didn't know, but it was a mixture of people I knew, people I didn't know personally, but they would come up to me and they were like, "Oh, Mike," and I'd be like, "It'll be all love," and they would be very encouraging in their words, right? And that gave me the motivation, I guess you could say, to keep going in politics, right? It's not like I was questioning it really. It's not like I was like Master Ace about to hang it up, but it's always good to get that validation because sometimes, you kind of just doing what you do. It feels like you're going through the motions, or you think, or you start to question, like, oh, why am I still doing this? This again, year after year, the same thing. And it's nice to get that validation from folks that reminds you that you're doing a good thing and people are appreciating what you're doing, right? They're supportive of it. Yeah, it's not
Right.
not just trying to do this in a vacuum. Like, so they start to feel selfish. Like, why am I keep doing this if no one cares? People do care, and it's good to get that once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's good to be recognized for something effort that you're putting in, even if you, like I said, you think it's become something that's either routine or you might not have the same or self-image that you're having this impact or doing something, but other people come in and say, "Hey," you're like, "Oh, wow, someone is paying attention, someone is listening."
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really really good. I had a similar experience not too long ago where there was a someone that was posting in one of the groups out from for people in Japan, and they listed a bunch of people that they said recognize were making an impact on the expat community and the Black expat community and the impact expat community in general. And my name was listed on there.
Mm.
And I'm like, what the heck did I do? But apparently, I'm like,
Right,
what? I'm surprised I'm on here. And they're
right.
like, yeah, but for some of the things that I've done, with the BLM Tokyo, with different talks and things and whatnot. And so yeah, it was good to get recognized for that. One of the people comments like, yeah, we see what you guys are doing, or we see what you're doing. And so it's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
And sometimes that's all you need. And I think that applies to whatever you do in life, right? To sometimes it's not even about ego, right? It's just about
No, it's
it's like you get caught up in the grind of what you're doing day in and day out. And then after a while, it's almost like an out of body experience where you take a step back and you're like, who is this guy? He's just like doing this thing, but is it mattering, or can you feel the tangible effects of it mattering, right? So it kind of grounds you in a sense, right? You go there and you're like, okay, this does pay dividends, right? Like there is value in this. And then even stuff like someone would come up and just talk about one of my elections. And I'm like, oh, you know that person who ran against you? I just saw them the other day and they're doing, I'm like, oh, it's crazy that there are people out there who are watching that. And it should
right.
be obvious because it's a public election. There are thousands of people who are voting and everything. But it's so easy to lose sight of that when you're in it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, it's good. And I think yeah, it's not I mean, maybe some people it's ego, but it's not really an ego thing like what you're describing or what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's not an ego thing. It's
Yeah.
maybe it's kind of validation in a way. Just recognition, acknowledgement, because yeah, it can get, especially depending on what you're doing, it can be either stressful, it can be a lot of work, it
Right.
can be
Right. That's what it
tired.
is, like, right. So if you are working a job, you get that validation maybe by getting paid. And of course, there are other ways you might seek validation in your work, but that is a way,
Right.
right? Some people say, okay, I go to work and I know what I'm doing counts because I'm getting paid for it. And if I get paid for it for a while, obviously the person paying me appreciates my work. But now if you're doing political stuff, aside from the business, right? Aside from election law and stuff I get paid for, but just my
Right.
political activity generally, there's no money
Right.
in that. You're doing that from
Right.
your heart because you believe in it. But then
Right.
what is the quote unquote payment? Like, what are you getting out of it, right? How
Right.
are you able to see that it matters in any tangible way? I
I
think
think
that's
that's
the
the
way.
part.
Yeah.
How can you see that it matters?
Right.
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 Instead of more than saying like, what am I getting out of it? It's more than how can you tell if it matters?
Yeah.
How can you tell if this effort that I'm putting in is doing anything for anybody?
Right. That's
Um,
what it is. And that's why it's not about yourself because there are other
right.
people in the room coming up to you and like, oh, Mike, yeah, keep doing it. And it's like, okay, so what I'm doing isn't just about me. It actually is having an impact on others in some way.
Right. Yeah. And so that's always good. So, well, good. That
Yeah.
sounds like it was at least just for that the trip was probably worth it for you.
Right. Right. So, all right. So let's keep. I got some more things to say about this.
Oh
So,
yeah.
speaking of Master Ace, the funny thing is, I was going up. I drove up, had Malik Sanders in the car with me. We took a trip together. My car GPS, for whatever reason, has been taking me on these weird routes. I don't know what that is. It seems like it's been happening lately where let's say I'm going to New Jersey and I'm on the highway for a while, and I know which way generally I got to go. It'll tell me get off the highway here, and then you get off, and then you like do the side streets, and you're like, which does it give me a shortcut? Where am I going? And then it's like get back on the highway. I'm like, well, why did it tell me to do that? You know what I mean? And, like, then you start to rationalize, oh, maybe it was trying to get me around an accident, but no, I think it just is kind of tripping. So it did something weird going to Albany. It took me on a path I never went before. It got me off the highway very far from Albany, right? And then it had me going through these small towns upstate. And it actually was kind of cool because I passed by Martin Van Buren's hometown, right? Kinderhook. Never was there before. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I didn't realize this is where it was, right? And so you drive through these small towns. We're actually playing, Malik and I are playing Master Ace's Disposable Arts in the car, driving through these small towns. And he even made the comment. He said, this is probably the first time this album has been played in this town. Which I said it might be.
Yeah. You'd be surprised.
But it was that kind of town, I mean, very kind of rural type, you see the cows and everything. So
right.
Anyway, we finally get into Albany. We do the networking thing. There are different functions going on. Like I said, a lot of people recognize me, a lot of people show me love. But I was cautioning someone because, we just talked about the greatness, right? How amazing it feels to get all of this recognition. But if you're thinking about a particular election, like, oh, I'm thinking of running for this particular seat and I'm in such a great spot because I go to an event like this and everyone shows me love, you have to take a step back and ask yourself, are these folks in whichever room you're in going to be able to provide tangible support in that particular race, right? Like, for example, if I'm running for city council in this district in Southwest Queens, getting all the love in the Black Caucus conference isn't going to do me a whole lot of good. Now, sure, there are some union folks in there and some people can give contributions and who can volunteer. There's that. But there's also just a lot of encouragement from folks, which is good. But if you're looking at it from a tangible campaign perspective, I think it's easy to get gassed up and think, oh, look, all these people love me. But they really may not be influential in your particular district. So
right.
There was that, right? I had to caution someone, like, it's great to get that recognition, but if you're thinking about a particular race, really start thinking about, okay, who can really help in this particular race and how can they help? And, start thinking about that. Don't just get gassed up into thinking that, oh, I got, 1,000 high fives, I'm the man, I can win any race, right? Like there are different districts, different demographics, different factors at play. So, so there was that. And a lot of what I was doing there was business, right? At working with different candidates, networking for my own business and so forth. So I want to talk about, I guess it was on Saturday, there was a lunch that Senator Sanders does, right? So I wanted to stop in. He gets it catered in his office, and then he can show people, he actually buses people up from his district to Albany. So they can see the Capitol, they can go to conferences, they can check out their government in work, in action, and then he feeds them in his office on that Saturday. So it was very crowded in the office. I got some of the food and good soul food and whatnot. We might have discussed this before. I don't like eating standing up, especially if I'm in a suit or I'm in nice clothes. Like if I'm trying to eat, I'm standing there with a dish trying to eat rice and beans. It's not comfortable for me. It's too messy. I'm afraid something's going to spill on my shirt or something. Then I'm trying to drink also. I got the plate in one hand, the fork, and how do you hold the plate, the fork, and the drink at the same time? It's just not comfortable for me. So I wanted a place to sit, right? So I'm walking with the food now in my hand, and we're in Senator Sanders' suite, right? His office suite in Albany. I'm with actually Dan, who's on Andre's, Andre Bystrov's firm, right? Political firm, one of his partners. So we're there. We wander towards Senator Sanders' actual office, right? His office within the suite. At first, we're gonna, we walk in, but then we kind of take a step back because it looks like there's a meeting going on and we don't want to interrupt the meeting. And immediately they say, no, come in. It's a lot less formal than it looks, right? So we come in, we sit down. Now we're more comfortable. It's a nice couch and all. I can kind of sit down. There's a little table in front of whatever. So I can chill a bit and have my lunch. Well, the senator's treasurer is there, Denise, who, by the way, I got to give a shout out to her. When I first started running for city council, she helped set up my committee, right? She walked me through the steps of how to do it. And I said, this is awesome. How much money do I owe you for this? She said, don't even worry about it. I was just helping you get started, right? She, of course, wasn't doing it every single month after that, but she just got me started. And I always appreciated that she didn't ask for any money for that. So she is the senator's treasurer as well. So, she was in there. I think she was the one who said to come on in. So then I'm there. Malik is in there. And there's a woman in there who I didn't recognize immediately, right? She is talking about weed. And it's kind of funny that I walk in there to have lunch, and like a weed meeting breaks out. All of a sudden, there's a conversation about weed going on, and the senator tells me she is the woman in charge of weed for the state. That's what he said. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, so she's the woman in charge of weed. So, because I kind of walked in the middle of it, I didn't get the context at first of what her name was, what her title was, what this was really all about. I was just kind of trying to pick up on it as we were going on. But they're talking about the licenses that she was able to give these different businesses. And then she starts talking about consumption. She's like, the next step is going to be consumption, getting these different products, because she was saying that people come with, cookies or different food items that are infused with weed and want to get them approved by the state so they can sell them legally. So she was saying that's like the next movement, aside from opening these dispensaries, these people will have these products for consumption, how they're going to process those applications, how's that going to look. And then the senator started talking about the problems that we have with illegal shops, right? They're popping up all over the place. People are complaining. And his question was, how do you have the proper enforcement? What can the state do to provide the enforcement that you need without falling into the same trap of the war on drugs, right? Incriminating Black and brown people as happened in the past, right? For being involved with weed, for having weed, selling weed, whatever. He didn't want to go down that rabbit hole again, but he also wanted to be able to provide the right kind of enforcement so that people weren't just illegally operating these shops and taking advantage of the fact that marijuana is going to be legal, but in state now, but there's still are regulations and you got to do it the right way. So, there was a conversation about, well, maybe you go after the landlords, right? And maybe you find the landlord or you put them out of business or that kind of thing, instead of just throwing everyone in prison. So after a while, right, I guess I got more comfortable in the room and in the conversation. And it seemed like I was kind of taking over the questioning. And for a minute, I felt like it was an episode of Nuance, to be honest with you. It felt like I was interviewing this
host.
Yeah. And she would say something and I'd be like, well, how do you feel about that? And some people will say this, what is your thought on this? And I was like, okay, this is an interview. This is a Nuance interview. It has turned into a Nuance interview, right? And I remember, a few things came up. There was the regulation. There was, so I asked a question. She was talking about it's going towards consumption. And I said, well, that's interesting. So do you think we're headed for a world where when you go to a restaurant, like now you go to a restaurant and there's usually an alcohol menu. Are most restaurants going to have weed menus or food on their menu that has marijuana in it that'll get you high? And she said, yeah, she thinks that's where the world is going. She said, maybe not immediately, but that is the next iteration of this. She said, maybe in the next 10, 15 years, you'll start to see more and more restaurants with marijuana or cannabis infused items on their menu. So I thought that was an interesting take. She may be right about that. It seems like we may be headed in that direction, especially as more and more people are applying for licenses for these edible products that they're creating.
Yeah, I would imagine it's probably be more mom and pop type of places instead of chains of big restaurants. I couldn't imagine like Chili's adding a weed menu
Why
or
not?
something.
In the next 20, 25 years, why not? If they have alcohol, why not? Because they're trying to put marijuana and alcohol on equal footing, essentially.
Right, right. It's true. I mean, it could be put right there at the bar and, regulated like just like alcohol is, where the bartender's like, all right, yeah, you're too high, you're cut off. That's enough for you.
Right. And so I asked this question as well. There is a bill I know in the legislature now that would give police more authority to arrest for driving under the influence of marijuana. I'm not exactly sure the details of how that would work because the concern was raised, well, the technology still isn't quite there yet as far as testing automatically on the spot, right? It's not like a breathalyzer test. Although I think they are developing that technology. I think that's where it's going. I think it's going to be something like that for marijuana. but they were saying that technology wasn't fully developed yet. And so
Right.
logistically, that could be hard to do, but it is a
Right.
valid concern, right? That, just like you don't want people driving under the influence of alcohol, you don't want them driving
Absolutely.
under the influence of marijuana. I mean, there need to be regulations and laws in place to be able to crack down on these bad actors so that the rest of us could choose to enjoy it responsibly if that's what we're into.
Right. Yeah. So,
And so I noticed after a while, the senator got quiet. Then Borough President Donovan Richards walked in, and he just joined the conversation, and he was also kind of quiet. I was a little surprised by that. Usually he tries to take over a little bit, but he was very mellow. Also, no pun intended. I don't know what was going on. I think it was just a conversation about this. I don't think people were actually in it, but but one of the questions was about community boards, and I think I again brought it up. I felt like the host of this at a certain point. I brought up the fact that community boards and local civics, local groups have been complaining that it's too hard to shut down these illegal shops. They're popping up everywhere. But right now the sheriff has to do it. It's a long process, and it's not a very easy thing. And so
right.
they might complain about it, but you'll see them that they're not going away anytime soon. And I made that point, and I think the lady was saying, oh, there are things that you could do, like the boards can live stream. We're live at the scene of the shop. And I said, yeah. I said, well, the boards know that it's going on. It's not like they can't identify it. They're actually complaining. They're making the complaints, and it still takes too long. And then Donovan backed me up. He said, yeah, it does. It takes too long. So that was part of the discussion also. What could possibly be done? Maybe give more authority to the state troopers, or figure out some other people within the government who might be able to get in there and shut these illegal shops down quicker. And
Well, you would think if they're illegal, then I mean that's all it would take that the police could
you
just
would,
to
yeah, you would think it's got to go to the sheriff's office now, and it's just a weird
why
process.
yeah, I guess that's
Yeah,
a whole nother conversation because you would think, well, then why wouldn't the sheriff just go over there if the sheriff has that authority? Uh,
yeah, but I think there's like a backlog, and I guess there's some kind of due process rights. It's not an instant thing, right?
right.
It's a whole process that has to be done. But that was the conversation. How can you streamline that? And it might be a matter of maybe even putting more people on the job, right? Because she was saying, for example, when it came to these licenses, I think they just approved 110 licenses for dispensaries. And she was saying it took them a certain amount of time. They had to kind of get used to the process. But as they go on, it'll get quicker and quicker because they're kind of ironing out the clinks. Is that what you call that? Plugging up the holes and whatnot, yeah, making it more efficient.
Yeah. You
So,
know,
yeah.
I was gonna say I had an idea on how they could do that that weed sobriety test.
Mhm.
If they're suspected of being high, like the police officer could carry like a Snickers with them
I had
and
this same exact conversation with Andre. He's
just
like, just
wave it in their face. Yeah, yeah.
he said Twinkie, offer them a Twinkie, and if they take
Twinkie, yeah,
it,
yeah.
they
If
get
if they,
arrested.
if they can't resist, then
Right.
yeah, yeah, you're too high.
Right. And you have to make it clear that it's expired. Like it's not something that you would probably want if you were sober.
Right, right, right.
Like this is expired. It's been in the trunk for way too long. I think someone sat on it. I bet you the cream is being all smushed. It's nasty. You don't want this. If they're like, give it to me anyway, then it's a little
Right,
suspicious.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're busted. You're high. We're taking you in.
Right.
You're too high. We're taking you in.
Check to see if they got cotton mouth.
Right, right. Do you want some water?
Yeah, yeah. It's like there's like 10 different things, right? And you give them like a scale.
Right,
Like, they failed this test completely. So
right.
yeah. So we're getting there. It's interesting, right? That this is new, right? This legal marijuana industry of the state. It's a new thing that's all of a sudden here, and we have to navigate it and try to figure out the best way to come up with regulation that isn't overly burdensome, that doesn't criminalize a whole generation of people as was done in the past. So
Yeah,
how do we walk that line?
that idea, yeah, and that would be my concern. Even just talking about giving the police more power to do this or to do that or put more people on the job. It just sounds like similar tactics that were done during the war on drugs. And
Right.
it's like you don't want to start off on that foot. There's got to be other ways to go about doing this. You would think I, the easiest, and maybe this is how it's done, but you would think the easiest thing would just to be to shuffle marijuana under ATF, and if they can shut down illegal bars, they can do the same for illegal weed spots. Like maybe that's how it's done. I don't know. Maybe it is a backlog. There could be,
Yeah.
you know. So,
Well, it's like I said, it's really the sheriff that's responsible at this point. But
right.
um, the lady, I keep saying the lady for a reason. I'm going to get to who she is, right? Because this is my perspective. Don't forget, I don't know exactly who she is at this point, other than the lady in charge of weed for the state. That's how she was introduced to me. So,
Taylor Swift? No.
so she was saying, I think the senator asked her, "What is the most popular dispensary?" Right? And in fact, I think he even said, "Do shop?" Somehow it came up. Maybe she brought it up, but it came up that shops run by men and shops run by women tend to be different in terms of the atmosphere, the ambiance, the products
Okay.
that they're offering, the way they're talking about the products. She said that the shops run by men tend to be a little colder. It's kind of like where you'll go in there and maybe there'll be a computer and you order what you want from the computer and you get your stuff and you leave. Whereas shops run by women, it's like, they got the candles going, they got maybe the music playing, they got the salespeople, hey, how can I help you? And you're into this, maybe you're into this. And they try to make it more of an experience for you, like an all immersive experience. And she said that tends to be different. And I think the senator then asked, well, which shop has been the most successful so far? And she mentioned, she said the travel agency has been really good and they do this, they do it like this. And she started talking about some of the things that they do. And I interrupted. I said, well, wait a minute, is that an actual travel agency or is that just a store called travel agency?
Yeah,
She
I
said,
was confused for a second.
that's just the name of it. And even the senator said, oh, I thought it was an actual travel agency first, like from the way she was talking about it, right? But no, but it's the branding. It's a dispensary, I guess, called travel agency. But she said all of their branding doesn't talk about marijuana specifically. She said that they use euphemisms related to travel. So let's come soar with us, come,
But
take
is
your
that
flight
a
with us.
a shop run by men or run by women?
What's funny? I don't think she told us, but based on what she said, I would guess women
Okay.
because she described it as. I mean, I don't know. I could be going on a limb here. She described it as the male shops tend to be much more clinical or like they don't really put that kind of thought into it. It's just we want to go here and get our stuff and leave. Whereas the women, generally speaking, try to make it more of an experience. So based on that, I would guess the women, but I really don't know. But she said they've been successful in their marketing,
Mm,
and coming up with creative ways to do it, trying to stand out now because you have so many people coming out with these shops. It's like you want to make a name for yourself and do it in a creative way. And so
right.
she mentioned that. So as the conversation was going on, and I guess the senator saw I was doing a lot more talking now. He wanted to introduce me to her, and he said, "This is an attorney. He does a lot of work with me." And then she started asking me questions about who I am, where I came from, like how did I get into election law. Like she's kind of interviewing me about my background now, and she's the sweetest, nicest, most polite woman, right? She's so friendly, right? Like it's just so easy to talk to her. I didn't get the sense that she was introduced as the top woman in charge of this in the state, but she wasn't holding herself out to be like some kind of big shot. She seemed like very humble and kind, right, in her approach. So we were talking for a bit, and then when the senator had to go to eventually had to go to give a state of the district address, so the staff came in and said he had to go, and they were like, "Oh, let's all get a picture." I think the staff said, "Let's grab pictures." That now you have like 5 different people with cameras, right? Because you got the senator's staff, you got the borough president's staff, you might even have the lady staff. You had a bunch of people taking pictures, and we take some photos. After the fact, when I get a copy of one of these pictures, I'm gonna go post it up. I wanted to figure out who this woman was or what her name was because I wanted to put it in the caption. Who was I just speaking to? And I did some research on it, and I realized that she's Tremaine Wright, who I never met in person before, but I'm very familiar with her. Now, she is very big actually in Brooklyn politics. I'm more familiar with Queens politics, and so I haven't met everyone involved in Brooklyn, but I've definitely heard the name. And she's a lawyer herself. She was community board chair in Brooklyn. She was in the New York State Assembly representing Brooklyn. She ran for Senate backed by the party in Brooklyn, and she was just appointed by Governor Hochul to be the chair of the Cannabis Control Board for the state. And so once I saw that, I was like, wow, I can't believe that was her because I had known, again, going back to before where everyone recognizes you in the conference, yo, Mike, Mike, Mike. And it's like, you have like a little bit of a name. She is someone who definitely has a name in New York politics. And I could sense zero ego, right? It was such an easy, natural conversation, like you talking to a friend. And the whole time she was asking me about what kind of law do you practice, or how'd you get involved in election law? She never once said, I'm a lawyer too. And when she was bringing up the community board, you can go to the community board. They could be streaming the meetings and go into the dispensaries and say, this is an illegal shop, shut it down. She never mentioned that she was the community board chair at one point. I didn't know any of that. When she was talking about elections, oh, you do election law and you help Senator Sanders get on the ballot. That's cool. She never mentioned that she was in the assembly, right? And that she had to deal with that stuff too. Not that she had to, but I thought it was interesting just how chill she came across. She came across like a regular person who was interested in asking me about me, never once interjected any of her own body or tried to big herself up in any way, right? It was like so down to earth. And I was really impressed by that, right? Because I knew who she was, but I didn't know
Right.
that I knew that it was her.
No, that's good. Yeah. It's always good when you come across someone who's in that type of position that has that type of personality or disposition. It's always good and refreshing, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was like, wow, I'm really, really impressed by her. So it's
So
really,
I think what it sounds like you've got an in and we should open up a Nuance dispensary.
yeah, right. Imagine that. What
Yeah.
would you name some of the products?
We could go with the Nuance theme, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah, go with like the Nuance theme on there. And so like the Nuance even is about differentiating the different strains from each other. Like, yeah, this weed's not the same as this. You've got to understand the subtleties here.
right, right. We have something called Think It Through or
Right, right, right.
the poll of the week.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
the bottom
So,
line. What's the bottom line?
yeah. So yeah, I think that would work. So, but it's good to hear that they're approving other ones. I know the process of getting dispensaries approved is notoriously quite lengthy and involved, um, and have been kind of a lot of communities felt like they've been left out, especially communities that were overly burdened by the war on drugs. Um, so it sounds like if there's a process moving and in place, then it could be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say is that Miss Wright was very receptive to different ideas, right? She didn't come
Right.
in like she knows everything. She's acknowledging this is new. She was kind of put in charge of this, and she's open to hearing what people's thoughts are on this. How
Right.
should we navigate this process? Let's have a conversation, right? And so that's a good thing. She's not trying to dictate what goes on here. Um,
Right.
she is being humble, you know.
Right. And I think we did talk about this briefly before. I would still be nervous opening up a dispensary, even going through filing all the paperwork, doing it all the right way. I'd still be nervous because of the federal
Right?
law is not on board. Because at any point something could change and they could just come in and want to shut you down and
Yeah,
really.
right. Right. Imagine, for example, you get a Republican president again who's going to be on
Right.
drugs, right? And he instructs the feds to come in.
Right. And and they've got control of both houses, so they have no pushback that could happen if someone tries to put anything through. It just that would still make me nervous, you know.
Yeah,
Especially because depending on how much you've sold and how much you're moving, they could probably elevate the charges different, you've distributed $1 million worth of weed, like so yeah, I'd be really nervous about that.
yeah,
Shout out to James in the chat. Says it's expensive to open a dispensary too. I've heard that. Expensive, it's very involved. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart.
right,
So
right. Well, speaking of not for the faint of heart, have you been keeping up at all with what's going on in Fulton County in the Trump election interference criminal trial?
I have not. I've only just saw some of the videos that came out with Fani after the judgment was made and Trump was found that he have to pay. But
So that's the judgment in the New York civil case you're talking about.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
We could
So I
talk about
haven't.
that a little bit because there's some controversy over that. Um,
Right.
in particular, the damages that were found there, right? Because the argument goes, at least the Trump people, and I've seen others echoing this, they're saying, okay, even if he lied on some of the forms, what are the damages here if he paid back all of the loans?
Yeah, anyway, the damages. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, he was found liable for over $300 million.
yeah, but that would be it would be fraud
What are the
in
damages though?
if he paid it back.
Yeah.
I'm sure the bank could argue that um, you know, they could have used that allocated that money elsewhere and could have been lost income and revenue.
Well, it wasn't the bank that was suing him though; it was the state. Um, I guess on behalf of the banks. It's kind of
Mm.
odd the way that they did that. But yeah, I think the judge in this case had a ruling that said, well, it damages the marketplace of ideas. I guess they're saying it kind of poisons the well in terms of uh, perhaps influencing other loans, right? It just kind of
Not just that,
hurts the system.
the whole system.
Yeah.
Because if it's found that all you've got to do, if found out, is just give the money back and there's no harm, no foul, then guarantee you everybody's going to go in and lie and overinflate their wealth to get a higher
Well, I don't
loan.
know that. I don't know this to be true or not. I know Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He says that they all do that. He said that's the common practice in real estate. Everyone overinflates their wealth, and the banks have to make a determination as to what's true and what's not. You don't just take the person's
Right.
word for it. And so he
Right.
said that that's a terrible decision because everyone does it. Now I don't know. Again, I don't know the extent of that. He might be exaggerating. Maybe
Right.
more than others exaggerate. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this area, but that was the perspective that came out of that. That they all do it.
Right. But I mean, if there's they may all do it as there's got to I guess there's got to be consequences. And I guess it depends on the amount that they're doing it, the tune to which they're doing it, you
Right.
know.
And then there's the idea that by overinflating the value of his assets, he got a lower interest rate. And so
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how the math works out on that, but it's quite possible that he ended up paying less than he would have
And
had.
he should have paid.
Yeah.
So they could probably maybe they could the banks could complain about loss of revenue.
Yeah, but to the tune of over $300 million. I mean, I guess there are other types of damage. You can throw punitives in there and whatnot to justify that,
Yeah.
but it's
And
a very big judgment.
it is, it is.
Yeah.
He's got a couple of them against him right now that he's supposed to pay. That's, on a variety of things, which is why he came out with those ugly shoes.
Oh, yeah, trying to sell shoes. Uh,
Yeah.
so all
No, he
right,
sold
yeah,
out. They sold out like I think in 20 minutes. Like all of whatever amount he had, all of them sold out within like
he's got to do it. He's got to do a lot, I guess, at this point, because I don't think he's got the money in his pocket to pay for all this.
now
So,
if you hear let him tell it, he does, but
well, that's the issue, right? He exaggerates his worth. Uh,
right.
so, I think also apparently he said that his residence at Trump Tower was 30,000 square feet, but it was only 10,000 square feet in actuality. So,
Yeah. I mean that's been his whole brand, his whole life has been this grandiose, over the top, so I'm not really surprised at that. The problem becomes, I think his issue is when he stepped into this role of president, and all of your stuff now is going to be scrutinized. And it should be. If you're in the highest office of land, you're in a politics elected position, period. They should be. Like if he would have just stayed out of it, he could have skated by doing what he's doing. But now it's like, you've stepped into a different arena.
right.
Um,
But hasn't
there's
his brand
accountability.
also been that he wins at everything? And now people are
Right.
seeing he's losing over and over and over again. You got to think that that's hurting his brand too.
Well, yeah, well, going into during his campaign and his presidency hurt his brand in a variety of ways. It bolstered it with some groups, but then with others, like some because a lot of what he was making, he didn't all the buildings that had his name on them, he didn't build those himself. He was
Right.
licensing out his likeness.
Right. Right.
And
Not only that, right. Like you said, he didn't even own a lot of them anymore. Like the Trump Taj
right,
Mahal in Atlantic City, for example. It was just a licensing of his name and his brand, but he didn't own it anymore.
right. And a lot of them, there was some, I remember there was some buildings in New York that had his name on it and they took his name off. They
Right.
ended that because of they didn't want to be associated with the brand anymore. So
Trump Wing at Jamaica Hospital was one of them. Just recently, actually, there was they called it Trump Links. So it was a golf course. I think it says Bally
right.
Links now.
Yeah. So yeah, it definitely, when you go into politics into public life, period, but then you go into politics and become an elected official, and then you reach the level where he was at, I mean, you're going to be scrutinized. So, if you got something that's not above board, there's going to be a hit to your brand or your image or whatnot. But then again, some people find that great about him, oh, well, he's a great businessman. Well, yeah, of course he did this and that. Like,
Oh, but doesn't it kind of undercut that when he's losing all these cases and he's owing all this money? They could say, I don't know, okay, maybe in their warped mind they can justify him lying and committing fraud, but now he's actually being held accountable for it. And so not getting away with it, doesn't that kind of make him uncool? Because his whole thing was he's a winner, but now he's
no,
losing everything. He's losing every case, right? All the election cases, he tried to overthrow the election in 2020. He lost all those. He's losing these civil cases. He's likely going to be convicted in the criminal cases. He lost every election with the exception of 2016, but even then he lost a popular vote by millions. So what has he actually won recently?
no, because they support him. They think it's a witch hunt. He's a martyr to a lot of these people. A lot of them are deluded into believing
Oh yeah,
everything that he's
absolutely.
saying, and so they think that they're unfairly going against him. Matter of fact, there is a group put together a GoFundMe to try to raise money to help him pay this off.
Oh yeah, that's out there.
And,
But I still think it's a hit to his image. At least a part of his image that's I'm a winner, I win everything. Look at
right.
me. When he's losing everything. Right? That can't be good for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for his core audience,
Well, it's not just the core audience, but you have to if he's running for president, you gotta look at the whole country.
yeah, I don't know how much it's really affecting
And
because he is.
even with the core audience, still, I think a lot of the core audience was there because they perceived him to be a winner. They looked at him from The Apprentice, right? That's
Yeah.
the guy that they knew. And when they see him losing all these different things, that can't look good, for someone whose reputation is that of a winner. Now he is clearly not that. But I wanted to talk about this DA issue in Georgia. So this is the criminal case now where he said, find me the votes, right? Maybe he was trying to overturn the election results in Georgia. So that's a RICO case, a racketeering case, right? The same law that you go after mob members for. So he's on trial for that. The defense in that case is now trying to flip it around and put the DA on trial in a sense because they filed a motion to disqualify, right? They're trying to get the district attorney thrown off the case due to an alleged and ultimately admitted relationship, a romantic relationship that she had with the lawyer she hired to investigate and prosecute the case.
Right. So yeah, when we talked in the pregame, that was kind of the first time I had heard about that, and it's quite surprising that because she's been on point so far that this would be something that would be in her environment,
Well, you should watch some of the testimony. It's all online in Georgia. Any case involving a public interest, the media is allowed to be there and have cameras in there and everything, so you can watch it as it plays out. And there's really hours of testimony, but you can check out some of hers in particular. And if you would like some of the lawyers, right, the one that she's accused of having an affair with. So the issue here is not
I did
only
see the video that she did when she was rebutting somebody when she was like, you're confused. You think I'm on trial.
right. That was it. That
These
was part
people
of it.
are on trial for trying to overturn the election. I'm
Yeah.
not on trial here, no matter how much you want it to be.
Right. So this was a hearing on that motion as to whether she should be disqualified. And so for the purposes of the hearing, she essentially assumes the role of the defendant, even though she's not. The case isn't about her, but that particular motion is. And so Really, it's a way to delay the case, if anything, and also maybe poison the well, if you want to call it that, in
Right,
terms of public perception, right? Because the legal analysis here is they're going to determine if she should be disqualified. If she is disqualified, she's going to be replaced with a different prosecutor, and then the case is
right,
going to proceed without her. And so, why should it matter whether she's on or off the case? Well, it's a delay tactic, number one, because as you know, they're trying to, the defense wants this to be determined, resolved after the election. So they're doing whatever they can.
right,
There's more delays, right? They don't want this to happen now, especially before the nomination is locked up.
right.
So that's really a big part of it, and like I said, also they want to throw doubt into people's minds and say, oh, look at this.
Exactly.
We told you this was illegitimate, look at it. Or the people saying it was illegitimate, I think
Right,
maybe they're onto something here, because look at this going on, right? This is corrupt. So
right.
I think that's really what's going on. And they're trying to embarrass the prosecutor and the people involved in the prosecution. They're trying to
Sure.
flip around and scrutinize them the same way they're being scrutinized. So
Right,
the issue here is not only about the relationship, it's the defense is trying to prove that there is a financial benefit as a result of the relationship, right? It's one thing to
right.
have a relationship, but was there any improper financial benefit, and did that influence any decision making, right? She hired this gentleman to investigate the election interference case. If she is benefiting financially from that, well, then there is obviously an argument that perhaps they shouldn't be the ones prosecuting this case, right? For example, her decision to indict him or not could have been influenced by the money that she was getting from him, if she was getting money from him. And so the line of questioning was about, oh, you guys went on vacations together. Did he pay for the vacations? When you're the DA, you have to submit a form, a financial disclosure form, and you said that you didn't receive more than $100 in gifts from any prohibited source. But did he take you out to dinner? Did he essentially buy you things amounting to more than $100, right? And so her
Would he
whole
have
thing,
been a prohibited source?
a prohibited source is anyone doing business or who wants to do business with the county. So yeah, he would be. So she
I'm
was saying in her testimony that first of all, it was a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, so she didn't consider it to be a gift if they went out to eat. She was saying, well, sometimes I would pay, sometimes he would pay. I don't know if it added up to more than $100, but I don't think that was what the crux of it was. I don't think that was what the intent of that question was. If, a boyfriend and girlfriend, and sometimes I pay, sometimes he pays. So that was her defense to that. When it came to the trips, that was a big focus on this. The vacations they took, they went on 2 cruises, they went to Napa, they went a bunch of places, Belize. Um, Her testimony was that even though he paid with his credit card for these trips initially, she reimbursed him with cash. The thing of it is, she didn't have any record ever of withdrawing the money, of paying the money. She said she just kept cash at her house. And her whole thing was, well, my father,
that much cash?
right. She said, my father told me that I should keep up to 6 months worth of cash at all times. She's like, I don't keep that much, but maybe it goes up to like, 10, 15,000 I might have in my house. And so I just pay cash.
You don't
Um,
want to tell people that?
but right, that was my thought. Is she just kind of now marking herself? Are people just going to want to break into her house? God forbid, right?
Yeah, like what are
But
you doing?
but this was her way of arguing that she was not receiving a financial benefit from him, right? She knew it would make her look bad if she admitted on the stand that, oh yeah, he took me on these expensive vacations. And by the way, he recommended that I prosecute Trump, and I did. So she wanted it to be that they were 50-50 partners. He wasn't giving her any money. It was just, there was nothing financial to be
And I
gained
guess
from that.
the idea of there potentially being a financial benefit is because since he's the prosecutor, he's getting paid by the I guess the state, and then
County.
they could be splitting the money.
Right. Well, that's one way of looking at it. Or right, that she has a contract with him, or she gave him a contract through the county. The county is now paying him. But if he's
Right,
taking that money that he's being paid with and taking her on vacations,
right,
she's getting that. And also there's the idea of what amounts to an improper gift, even if it wasn't her giving him the money in the first place. it could be looked at as almost bribery. If he's going in there and he's saying, I'm gonna take you on these expensive trips, and by the way, I make these recommendations to your office. It's like he's like, it can be seen as he's buying his way to to the prosecution, or to get what he wants, right? He's bribing her in a sense.
I wonder, were they in a relationship before she hired him, or did
Oh,
it?
that was also a point of contention. She and he are saying no, but there's some who don't believe that because there's someone else testified that they've been seen together prior to that, and there's some doubt there, right? They're trying to make it sound that it only started after the fact. I'm not sure that's even the most relevant point, because even if it started after the fact, you could still have this improper relationship, especially if the money is flowing, where he's paying her money inappropriately and making recommendations upon her as DA.
But you could also kind of use it as a a reason that if it was done after, if it was done before the fact, then you'd be like, okay, she's trying to funnel it to her boyfriend and they're trying to make this money thing. But if it's after and they kind of fell into the relationship after the fact, then it would kind of lend credibility to the idea that she didn't choose him for this financial benefit. She chose him because that was, maybe he was good for the role.
Maybe
Um,
initially, right?
right.
And she also said that he wasn't her first choice, that there was a more qualified person who didn't get it for whatever reason, ended up going to him. Some people are pushing back on this idea that he doesn't seem qualified to do this. I think he
Mm.
mostly dealt with, if I'm not mistaken, traffic issues, something like that. They were saying, why is he the guy that you're
Right.
hiring to to recommend whether to bring charges against the former president, considering he doesn't have any kind of experience, that would justify that. So some people are questioning that aspect of it. But even if it started legitimately, let's say they didn't have a romantic relationship at the beginning when they had this contract, what if one were to develop along the way, and
Right.
now you're in a relationship, you're taking this woman out, the DA out for expensive dinners, taking her on vacations, and you're issuing reports saying, these are my findings, these are my investigations, I recommend you bring charges. Does that create at least an appearance of impropriety?
But I mean, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that part of it, isn't that part of what his job, what he's hired to do anyway?
Right, he's hired to do that, but not the part about him giving her money.
Right, that part, no. But I mean, as
Yeah.
far as these recommendations, I mean, that's kind of what he's supposed to be
That's what
doing.
he's
So
supposed to do. But the point is that it could be unduly influenced by the money.
I guess I don't.
And that's why you're not supposed to give elected officials gifts. I mean, or really,
Yeah,
you're
I
supposed to
get that.
accept gifts, right?
I,
They're not supposed to accept gifts from people who are doing business with the city, with the state, with the county, because this
right,
is how it looks. It's like, it looks like a bribe, whether it is or it isn't. It can be
right.
interpreted that way. It can be seen that way.
Yeah. See, it's really just very disappointing that the situation even exists. Like, this is a very high profile case
Right.
that, and this is one that you needed to dot all the I's, cross all the T's,
Yeah.
and she should have from the start, both of them, I would imagine, should have from the start known, okay, look, we need to make sure that there's just no question here, right? That this what we're doing is above reproach.
Mm-hmm.
It's all proper. So, either not get into the relationship or find someone else to do it. Like it's very disappointing that this is even a situation.
Right. And I think that goes back to, in a sense, what I was talking about earlier, when you do these things and sometimes you don't realize, you lose sight of who is watching, right? Who it's affecting. Sometimes you get caught in your little bubble. She
Right.
might have been going to work every day, coming back, and to her, it's just a job now. She may lose sight of the fact that this is a very powerful position. The district attorney for the county that covers most of Atlanta, Georgia, the one that's
Right.
prosecuting potentially a former president of the U.S. Who's
Right.
no president has ever been prosecuted prior to
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
one, right? This is a monumentally big, historic moment, and I think it's easy to lose sight of anything. You might, even if you are the president, right? I bet you after a while, it's like, yeah, I'm in the Oval Office, I go back to the residence, I go to sleep. It's like, it becomes a job. It's like anything else,
Sure.
right? You kind of get used to it to a certain degree. So
Right.
I think that might be a similar type thing where she perhaps lost sight of the size of what she was doing, right? It was just her life, and now she's going to date this guy, and I can date who I want to date. What's the problem? You don't realize the kind of scrutiny that you'll be under.
It's quite possible. You know, because especially like I said, such a monumental and a historic case,
Yeah,
the defense is gonna try to pull out everything that they can to make sure this doesn't happen. So it's just disappointing that that's the case because the half of the country wants this prosecution to win, and have been calling for it for years. Like a lot of people feel like his accountability is long overdue on everything. And for there to be these kinds of hiccups is really disappointing and can easily disillusion a lot of people with the
sure,
process as a whole.
sure. Now the whole idea of her allegedly paying back in cash, it's kind of hard to believe. It's
It
possible,
is.
but given the position that she is in, you would think she would at least have the sense to create some kind of record of it, if that's what she was doing. Every single time he took her on a trip, she said, "Oh, I just gave him $2,500 in cash." Really? And you don't think that that's going to be problematic for you?
Yeah, it doesn't, but again, if they were in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be something that you would think about either. Like imagine, going out with your partner and they paid for dinner, you get back home, you slide the money, and I know the amounts are very different,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't even think about it
Right.
to be like, oh, I need to write this off or I need to get a record of this.
Right. No, right. And we said that sometimes you lose sight of whatever you're doing because you're just in your day-to-day life, you're in the grind. But at a certain point, you would think she would take a step back and say, wait a minute, I'm the DA of Fulton County. I can't be doing this. I mean,
You
did
would
she
hope.
ever have any kind of self-awareness about the fact that that relationship could be looked at as improper? And if
Right.
she had that self-awareness, did she ever stop to think maybe I should be documenting the money that we're spending so that it doesn't look like he's just bribing me?
Right. Now, were they in and it's not completely relevant, but are they in a relationship or I think
They were.
they were. So it wasn't an affair. It wasn't like she was with someone else and he was
He
with someone
wasn't
else.
married. He might have been married. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe, maybe not. It was described as an affair. I'm not sure what connotation of affair they meant when they said that.
Right.
But it was a romantic relationship.
Okay.
I think maybe he was divorced. So I, mean, I guess it wouldn't be like a marital affair, but a romantic affair of sorts, I guess.
Right. Yeah, you know, it's disappointing that this is even something that was in this process at all. Like you would hope that this would be just
Right.
cut and dry.
The judge, I gotta say this: the judge is a Republican, right? And
That's it.
well, you might think that he'll be biased towards the defense in this one. From what I understand, I believe he even worked though for the DA at one point. I saw someone say that. From watching the testimony, he does seem to be fair, at least in terms of his rulings that he's making on the spot. Right when people object, he seems to be kind of wonky in knowing the rules of evidence. He actually had a book of the rules of evidence in front of him. He was very particular in the way he was analyzing these objections. I was actually kind of impressed. I was like, wow, this guy, like, he just loves, you can tell he loves the litigation process. He loves the law. He loves the wrinkles of the rules of evidence. Like, well, technically it could be this, but really it could be this. Oh, he gets excited about that kind of stuff, right? And I was actually kind of impressed. And I think he made some well-reasoned rulings within the testimony, right? When a lawyer would object, usually he would have a good reason for sustaining or overruling the objection. So I was impressed with that. Will he now disqualify her? How will he rule on this? I don't know. If I had to guess, I actually don't think she'll be disqualified, believe it or not, because I don't think the burden was met of showing that financial interest. I think that they were fishing for it. They were trying really hard. To her credit, to Fani Willis's credit, she answered the questions, every question that was asked of her. She answered them in a way that would discredit their line of argument. Like she knew exactly why they were asking the question and what they were trying to prove with it, what they were going to try and argue with it. And then so she got ahead of it and she answered the question in a way that didn't give them what they were looking for. Right now, she might have even done too much. Normally they tell a witness when you're on the stand, just answer the question as is asked. Don't go into a long-winded explanation, right? If I say, what color shoes were you wearing that day? Well, the answer is maybe black or brown or whatever. You don't say, well, they were black, but let me tell you, I bought them on this day and I took them there and I took them and this how. But just to stick to the question that I asked you, right? Don't try to figure
Right.
out where I'm going with it or why I'm asking it, or don't try to make an argument. Just answer the question. So she was not doing that. She was answering the question and also trying to explain why the premise of the question or where they're going with the question is not correct, right? And a couple of times the other side would object to that. Can we please not do these long-winded speeches? Can we not have to filibuster? Can we just get to the answers? I think the judge was fair, maybe even gave her more leeway than you would expect, right? The judge said, listen, you can explain your answer, but try to keep it to the question. Don't go overboard with it. Just answer the question, and then you can offer a brief, some brief clarity or brief explanation as to why that's the answer. So he kind of let her talk maybe more than you would expect. And I think she was able to get all of her answers on the record in a way that makes it hard for them to make their case because they really didn't have the proof that they were looking for as far as the financial impropriety or the financial benefit. It was really just them trying to poke holes in their credibility by saying, so so you're saying that you have no record whatsoever of this every time conveniently, every time you paid in cash, huh? Oh, you got all this cash at your house, huh? Oh, really? Not one ATM receipt, huh? No, nothing. But that was kind of what they were doing. As every time she would say, but let me explain why. My father told me to do it like this. And let me, so she had like a story for everything. Um,
Right.
Again, personally, I have a hard time believing everything that she said. It's just
Right.
hard for me to believe that she really paid him back in cash. If I had to guess, I think the truth is that he did actually pay for a lot of these things and she never paid him back. But with that said, I don't think the evidence is going to establish that because the other side didn't have any proof that she wasn't telling the truth. So
Right.
I think her testimony is more or less going to stand. This is what she says. You can't prove otherwise. They haven't met their burden of showing she's got to be disqualified. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And it's and you know what? If they are in a relationship, one partner taking the other partner on vacation, you know, is not it's not strange, right? So that's probably why she's making up that story, or I don't know if she's making up the story, but why she's giving that story. Like I paid him back in cash because it does sound very, something doesn't sound right,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
really, you're sitting there with 10K in cash in your house at
Right.
all times, and you just
And you
slide
know what?
him.
And if it is true, it's also kind of unreasonable, right? It's so one of those things where it's either
Right,
not true or if it is true, you should know better. Come on. Right.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so yeah, you paid him back like the whole thing. So every time you guys go on a vacation, like you each pay your own halves.
Yeah.
Uh,
And she would go into a whole story about, my daddy taught me you don't rely on a man for nothing.
she's a
My
DA.
that
She's
kind of
she's a DA. Like she understands how to formulate. I'm sure she
right,
prepared well for her,
right, right, right.
yeah, her
And that was the
testimony.
thing. Yeah. Like
It just doesn't, not
you ask
saying that
my
it's
daddy,
not,
he'll tell you you don't rely on a man for nothing. She was like, you always keep $500 in your pocket because if that man acts up, then you got someplace to go. And the other side was trying to spin it around. They were saying, so all right, so you're testifying that you keep all this money on hand so that you can leave in the middle of the night and there'll be no trace of you. And she's like, that is not my testimony, sir. And then she goes on and she tries to explain it even more.
yeah. And listen, it's not in the realm of impossibility that she's telling the truth. It's
Right,
very possible. Um, it's just doesn't sound very probable.
right,
But again,
right. But again, the burden is on the defense, right?
right,
Prove this
without a
financial
shadow of doubt.
benefit. Well, not a shadow
Right.
of a doubt. It's not, again, she's not on trial. This is not a reasonable doubt situation.
Okay.
Um, but they do have that burden of proving that for the purpose of this motion.
Right.
But I don't think they proffered the proof aside from just trying to question her
Right.
credibility.
Oh well.
But it is really interesting because they were really digging deep into everyone involved, right? The lawyer, the guy, they put out an invoice where they said, listen, you billed Fulton County 24 hours on one day. Can you explain how you worked 24 hours in one day. And he was looking at it and he said, that is not what this says. If you read the invoice, it says date completed. And so he's got these tasks listed and he lists the date that he completed that particular task. And then he's got the hours that he did total on that task, not the hours he worked on that date alone. So,
Right.
for example, right, November 15th, I completed pre-trial preparation, 24 hours. It doesn't mean I worked 24 hours on November 15th. It means I did 24 hours on pre-trial preparation, which ended on the 15th.
Right.
So he explained it that way. And then the other lawyer basically disregarded what he acted like he didn't understand or he didn't explain it at all. And he said, for the record, please read on the stand, please read the date and how many hours you charged the county of Georgia on November 15th. And he's like, but that's not what this says. I didn't say I charged them for 24 hours on November 15th. Like on November 15th, I charged them that for all the work that was done on different days.
Right.
And they would completely, they'd be like, again, I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you to tell us how many hours you charged the state on November 15th, right? Like they were really trying to trip them up. But the thing is this, they were both lawyers. Like he's a lawyer. Fani Willis is a lawyer, obviously. So they knew where the defense was going with these questions and how they were trying to trip them up, what they were trying to do. And they were good at refusing to say sometimes what they were trying to get them to say.
Right. And I think I would guess that the defense knew that what they were trying to say, they understood it. It's just but while they're making this banter back and forth, they're stalling for time. They're pushing things further down the line and muddying the waters more and more to try to get the result that they want. Like I don't believe if they are lawyers that they don't understand that invoice says this case, because I'm sure that's how they bill too.
Right.
I'm sure that's how they bill as well.
Well, no, maybe not. I don't know if that's true. I think it was a bit of an unusual way to bill because he even said that after the fifth or sixth invoice, he stopped doing it that way because it was a little confusing. I do think initially when they asked the question, they thought that they had him. So I think what happens is you start gathering this evidence. You start looking at these invoices, you look through these documents, and you're with a team of other defense lawyers and staff and whoever, and you start almost high-fiving each other like, oh, we got him on this, we got him on this. Look at this invoice, 24 hours in one day. We're going to embarrass the hell out of him with this one. How is he going to explain that? He worked 24 hours in a single day. When does he sleep? When does he eat? That's ridiculous. And it's like they don't even dig that deep into it because they get so excited about the fact that they think that they got something. And so when they first brought that up, I actually think that they thought that that was a legitimate argument I think so because when he said to me, he said on the stand, Mr. Wade, he said,
breaking news.
Scala said, he said, I'm glad you brought that up, the 24-hour thing up, because I can explain that, right? And the other lawyer said, I think you better. And so I think that they thought that he wasn't going to be able to explain it. That was the impression that I got. Like they really thought that they had the smoking gun there. But then once he did explain it, they weren't willing to accept it. I think at that point they had to realize it, but they were still trying to get him to say on the record, on this date, I billed the state for the county for 24 hours,
Right. Yeah.
So
well, we'll see.
And to be honest, this is why sometimes people say bad things about lawyers, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, ultimately it comes down to it's disappointing that this is even a part of this case, that this situation exists.
Right.
Because we want this guy to be held accountable. Like they tried to overturn the election. This is not a small traffic infraction.
Right. And I think people need to be talking about this, not just in terms of trying to overthrow an election, but trying to throw out proper votes, trying to stop people from having their voice heard, right? Because what you're saying is everyone who voted against you shouldn't have their vote counted, or that that result should be overturned. And so it's a matter of not only trying to overturn an election, but trying to disenfranchise people, trying to say that your vote doesn't matter.
Right, and that strikes at the heart of our system, and that's so dangerous. So,
all right, well, hopefully there will be a resolution on this and justice will ultimately prevail. We do want to briefly go over our poll from last week. In fact, why don't we set up the poll for this week since we're on this topic, and then we can go to the poll from last week, and then we can wrap up.
Sure. Go ahead. What's the poll for this week?
All right. Well, the poll question of the week is, do you believe that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, let me just do that again, I said Willis. I don't know why I said that. Take two. The poll question of the week is, do you believe that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis should be disqualified from the Trump, Georgia election case due to an affair? See, now I'm getting tripped up. You asked me if it was unfair. In a relationship. Okay. Wait, didn't say all that? Or should I just leave it as should be disqualified from the case and I'll know what that means?
No, add the clarification. Okay. Add the clarification.
Due to her relationship with the special prosecutor. Okay, I can say it like that.
Okay, so was this take three?
Yes.
And action.
The question of the week is, do you believe that the Fulton County District Attorney should be disqualified from the Trump, Georgia election interference case due to her romantic relationship with the special prosecutor?
That's a good one. Okay. That's a good one. Print it. Everyone take lunch.
Yeah, right. But please, if someone takes you out for lunch, reimburse them and have the proper receipt showing you, in case.
Well, if you're on a case prosecuting a president,
I think it's a good practice in general, right? I mean, if you're going to want to show at some point that you reimburse someone for money, you need the record to prove that. It's
if you want to show it.
Yeah,
that's if you want to show it. Like right.
I mean, if you have a reason to believe, which she clearly did, that this could come back at some point, right? That someone could make an issue of it. And that goes for anything, right? If it could be when it comes to your taxes, so whatever it is, right? If you think that you may need at some point a receipt, a record of something, make sure you're keeping those records.
Right. Well, it sounds like she didn't believe that she needed to. And that could be part of the issue as well.
That's part of the problem. I understand the idea some people have. They don't trust the system. They don't trust banks. They think that can collapse at any point, or whatever. I think there was a whole argument about access to credit, and they said it was cultural in the Black community. A lot of us don't believe, right, that we're going to get credit cards and whatnot, and so we rely on cash more than anything. I get that, but when you're the DA, when you're in these positions, you need to be a little more cautious. It just doesn't look good to be in a situation and just be on the stand saying, nope, cash, nope, I got no proof because cash. It seems a little
especially when you're in the middle of a case like such a high profile and historic case. The scrutiny is going to be there.
Yeah. So all right, well, what were the poll results from last week?
We didn't get poll results from last week. I didn't get it up, and I did not put it on Daily Kos. It just didn't seem like it would fit. So we didn't have any poll results. Okay. For some reason, it didn't get any views on YouTube. I think it was really short because it only came out to be like 3 seconds. So
what was the question? Remind me.
The question was, did you enjoy the Super Bowl halftime show?
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't a big loss. Yeah. So the previous poll that we did actually got 2,000 views, and that was the one on if New York should cover half of the migrant expenses. If the state should cover half the migrant expenses for an NYC, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, that's it with that.
Well, let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on any of the stuff. Did you enjoy the halftime show? Should Fani Willis be disqualified? Should the state cover half of the city's costs? Let us know your thoughts.
I still haven't watched the halftime show.
Okay, it's on YouTube. So,
yeah, I know it's on YouTube. Like I said, I haven't seen it. I've seen a couple of the controversies, and I know Swiss Beats finally made a post about it because people were going crazy about how Usher hugged his wife.
Oh yeah.
Other than that, yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Yeah, I'll check it out though at some point.
Well, with that said, is it time for the bottom line?
Yeah. So what is the bottom line this week?
I would say the bottom line is know that people are watching what you're doing. Everyone has an audience, right? That's especially true if you're the DA of Fulton County or if you're performing at the halftime show at the Super Bowl. But it's even true for most people, and probably all of us listening and watching right now, to some degree. I find sometimes I'll put up a post on social media and not get a lot of responses, and I think that means that no one is watching. And then maybe a few months later, someone will randomly bring up that post, and I think, oh, okay, people are watching. I go to Caucus weekend, right? People approach me, hey, Mike, blah blah blah. This election stuff going on. You ran in this. You're going to run again, or this person who ran against you, or it's like, appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up. This is the man right here. You hear all these things. And it's like, all right, people are watching, and sometimes we need to be reminded of that to ground ourselves. But I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that this is not happening in a vacuum. Nothing we're doing, especially in today's world, is going unnoticed. And so behave accordingly.
So the bottom line is basically from Jay-Z, the streets is watching.
Say that.
Shout out to Jigga. So, all right. And of course, check us out on YouTube, at Nuance Show, Instagram, everywhere else where podcasts are, Apple Music, Spotify, and Amazon, all of those places. Join us, communicate with us, argue with us, fight with us, slide in our DMs.
Mm.
All of that.
Yes, as always, we've got work to do. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.